Hello, children. A very good afternoon to you all. Welcome back to our language class. Children, in our previous lesson, that is, No Formalities Please, Part 1, we saw that the students of class 4 wrote a letter, isn't it? They wrote the letter to their principal asking permission to take the library books home, that is home issue facility. Now in this part, that is the part second, we will see what happens here. No formalities please, part 2. Mrs. Desai met the principal soon after class. She told her about the excitement that followed the announcement of new books in the library. They just cannot wait to read all those lovely books, she beamed. The principal was also delighted and praised her. The credit goes to you, Mrs. Desai. You have created and aroused their interest in reading books. It is going to help them in great deal in future. Yes, madam, said Mrs. Desai, but they find the weekly library period too short a time to read. So, my students are going to appeal to you to allow home issue of books. They have returned to you a letter of request. Now here in these paragraphs, children, Mrs. Desai, after the class, she goes and meets the principal and tells her about the excitement of the class. When she announced about the new books in the library. She also said that the children were all very eager to read the lovely books. Okay, now the principal was also very happy and delighted. She praised the teacher, that is Mrs. Desai, and said that all the credits goes to you, Mrs. Desai, because you have created interest and aroused. Aroused means awakened the habit of reading books, which is going to help the children a lot in future. Now Mrs. Desai is telling the principal that the children find the weekly library period too short or very little time for them to complete their book or finish reading their book. And so she tells the principal that the students are asking permission to allow them to take the books home to read. And what they have done, they have written a letter of request to the principal. Now when Mrs. Desai told about the letter, the principal was surprised. Why? So Mrs. Desai explained to her that she had to teach the children a polite formal letter, and so she took this opportunity, a chance to make the children write a formal letter. Okay, so when the principal asked why she has asked the children to write a letter, she explained that she wanted to teach the children to write a formal letter. A letter? Why? Asked the principal in surprise. I had to teach the class how to write polite formal letters, and I took this opportunity to make them actually write a formal letter, explained Mrs. Desai. Excellent, Mrs. Desai, exclaimed the principal, and I shall not dampen their interest in reading. I shall certainly allow them to take books home for reading. Now the principal was very happy and she praised Mrs. Desai and said, excellent, that she had told them about writing a letter, and she said that she will not dampen means she will not reduce or decrease their interest in reading. She also said that she will certainly allow them to take the books home. So Mrs. Desai was also very happy to know that the principal was very much interested in giving the children the permission to take the books home. The next morning, the principal found the letter on her desk. She signed the letter with the remark, permission granted, and sent it to the librarian. To encourage the children of class 4 further, the principal instructed the librarian to give a return reply to the students, and here's what he wrote. Now, in the next morning, when the principal enters her office, she found the letter on her desk. She understood that it was a letter written by class 4 asking permission to take the library books home. Immediately, what she did, she signed. The principal signed the letter and wrote a remark. What was the remark? Permission granted. And she sent that letter to the librarian. Who is a librarian? Librarian is he or she who is in charge of the library, or who takes care of the books and their details. They also take the books and they keep a note of the books being returned, when it has been taken, etc. And all these are done by them. So now the principal hands over the letter to the librarian and asks the librarian to write a letter to the students of class 4. Now let's see what the librarian writes. Library, Pragati Vidyalay, Vanchanpur, and the date. That is on the right hand corner. What is that? The sender's address. And on the left hand corner near the margin is the receiver. Who is the receiver? The students of class 4. And then comes the salutation. Dear children. And here goes the letter. I am delighted to know that you are so keen on reading the new books in our school library. The principal has been kind enough to grant to your class permission for home issue facility. I shall keep the library open for an hour after school on all weekdays. You can come and collect any one of your choice and return it the following week. But I must urge you to read and observe the library rules displayed in the library. Do come and enjoy reading the books. Sincerely yours, Mr. Vijay Patil, librarian. This was the letter written by Mr. Vijay Patil, the librarian. Hey, great news, cried the monitor. Look, we have received a letter from the librarian. And guess what? We can take story books home to read. Wow! Exclaimed Shruti with bright round eyes. Goodbye, boredom. Welcome, happy hours, shouted Akshay. The letter from the librarian was put up on the class notice board for all to read. When Mrs. Desai walked into the classroom, the students of class 4 burst out into many exclamations of thanks. Shall we write a letter of thanks to the librarian? Suggested Manuja. That's an excellent idea, said Mrs. Desai, smiling to herself at this new interest in formal letter writing. This is the letter of thanks the children wrote to the librarian. Now what happened? The news came, the letter came to the class written by the librarian. Now the monitor tells the children, see what we have received, and there is a great news. The letter from the librarian stating that they can take the storybooks home to read. So they were all very, very happy. Shruti exclaimed. She showed her joy and happiness with the bright, round eyes. And Akshay was shouting, goodbye boredom. Boredom means boring time, when you are feeling bored. So when you don't have anything to do, now you can read storybooks. And he also said, welcome the happy hours that are going to come. The letter is put on the class notice board for all of them to read. Now when Mrs. Desai, that is the English teacher, enters the class, the whole class was excited and they were all expressing and telling the teacher their thanks towards her. Now when Manuja asked the teacher, can we write a letter of thanks to the librarian? The teacher, Mrs. Desai, said with a smile on her face that it was a wonderful and excellent idea, and she was very happy to know that the children have developed an interest not only in reading books but also in writing a formal letter. Okay, now we will see what the children write saying thanks to the librarian. Class 4, Pragriti Vidyalay, Vanchanpur, and the current date. On the right hand corner is the sender's correct address and date, and exactly on the left hand corner is the receiver's address to the librarian, Pragriti Vidyalay, Vanchanpur, and it is all written properly as taught by Mrs. Desai. Okay, and then the subject very shortly expressed, an expression of thanks. Okay, after that comes the salutation. Dear sir, thank you ever so much for kindly making the home reading facility available to us. We are really grateful that you are going to wait back 1 hour after school just for us. We can now read books of our choice at a stretch. Thank you very much for your encouragement. We promise to abide by the library rules and handle the books with great care. Many thanks once again. Yours faithfully, students of class 4. This was a letter the children wrote to the librarian. It was a thank you letter by the students of class 4 to the librarian. Hope children you all understood this lesson. This lesson also teaches you how to write a formal letter. Thank you children.